Welcome everybody. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a very simple casual game here. And what we're going to do is we're going to first of all start off here. We'll go to New, and we're going to do an HD project in landscape mode. The reason is that you can use this on the most amount of devices, so you can use it on TVs as well as mobile phones if you want. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Project Properties, copy the window size, and then make sure the layout size is simply this here. This way, this way the whole entire project is just the window that you see here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add in a sprite, and we'll make it kind of an off gray. I'm going to make it purposely a very much lighter gray than what we're normally used to, and that way we can kind of see it and debug it a little bit better. Let's go ahead, let's fill this out to the entire background here, and I think that works out quite well. We're going to go ahead and push F2 and type this in as background, and we're going to go ahead and lock it just like that here, and then we'll add another layer. Make sure you select that new layer up top there. So now we can see we have this item here. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull up our sprite here, and this one's going to be an off-white, and what I'm actually going to do is make this 248 by 248 by 248. This slider goes all the way up to 255, right? And that's pretty normal here. But what we're going to do is just make it 248, 248, and that's an off-white, and we'll just simply put that in there. So you can see that that works out quite well. And what this is going to be is we're going to have three separate lanes where you're going to be able to avoid objects here. That's all it's going to be. It's going to be a very simple game. But the problem is that you can see this is too big. So how do we resize it? Well, double click on it, click the resize button, and let's make this 150 by 150, okay? And one of the best parts about using very simple graphics like the one that you see here is that when it comes to stretching devices, there is much less of a problem. As an indie developer, detail is not your best friend. In fact, the opposite is true. Less detail and minimalist graphics are much better. Now, if you're probably wondering, especially if you grew up with the original Nintendo, how did they get around the problem of resizing? And keep in mind, when you play a game, it's very seldom that the person's going to play it on a screen that's similar size to someone else. So, for example, if you upload a game to Android, there are many different screen sizes, and that has to be all resized. So how did the Nintendo do it? Well, having hard pixels means that those pixels can scale up much easier than if the pixels were not. So what that means is, let's say if you had a white pixel and you had a TV size that was 4 times the size, all it does is it stretches those white pixels up to 4 times the size, and that way the sprite is just bigger. Right, but screen size is a constant problem here. So what we're going to do is we're going to see this here, and we're gonna have three items here. Right. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to need to add in the touch, because this is going to be a very simple game here, and the touch will allow us people on their mobile devices as well as their PCs or desktops, Mac, PC, whatever, to actually be able to make this work. Okay, so that is how we set up here. In the next tutorial, we'll set up we'll definitely set up the actual game. This concludes the tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to set up the lane choice here. So what's going to happen is that the user is going to either click in the lane 1, the lane 2, or the lane 3. And depending on where it clicks, it's just going to simply move it. So in order to do this, we need to pull up our trusty calculator, and we're going to have to take a look at the layout size here, and the height of this is 1080. So we need to go 1080 divided by 3, and we have 360. Now where this is going to come into play is that if you click in the first 360 pixels, which by the way, these numbers are pixels, if you click in the first 360 pixels, it will move it to lane 1, the second 360 lane 2, and the third 360 lane 3. There's a couple things you need to do first. First of all, we need to set up a global variable called lane, and this will simply count the lane. It's either going to be lane 0, lane 1, or lane 2. And the reason why I started counting from 0 is that computers do start counting from 0, and that it's good to start doing that as well. So in order to do this, we need to double click here and go to System, and we need to just type in compare, and we're going to compare two values. And it's going to be touch.x, okay? And actually, we don't even, we actually only need one of these here. Now, we actually need touch.y because y is the vertical value. So if touch.y is, we're going to say less than or equal to 360, we're going to change lane, we're going to go set value of lane to 0. Okay. Before we start, go on here, we need to call this player, and we need to unlock this here and call this background. If I don't do that, I will get confused during development. So we're going to do that here now. The next thing we're going to do, and if we pull up our calculator again, 360 plus 360 is equal to 720. So if touch is less than 720, then we're going to go ahead and do that. But for those of you who like math, you'll know, and logic, you'll know that this is incorrect. What we have to do is we have to say is greater than, or is simply greater than 360. So what this means here is that if it's less than or equal to 360, it's going to set to lane 0. If it's less than 720 and it has to be greater than 360, if you don't do this, it won't work because it will assume that since, let's say, 360 is less than 720, it's always gonna do that here. We also have to change lane 1 to lane 2. And what we're also going to do is we're going to make this 1080 is less than or equal to 1080, and then this one here is going to be 720. And lastly here, we're going to change the lane to 3. Okay, so what that does here is that this will set up the lane 1, 2, and 3. If we run this now, nothing really happens. And that makes perfect sense because we haven't really done anything else. What we need to do now is we need to find out the position of this here. So if we add, let's say, 30 pixels to the top here. So if we do, let's say, 1080 plus 30, okay, or plus 30 again, plus 60 in there. So 1080 plus 60. And what this is going to do, and we're going to divide that by 3, and it's going to be 380. So for every 380, it's going to be in the lane here. So if we add this up in here, okay, so we'll take this here, and we will move this down. If we make it 60, that doesn't make any sense because we have to go 60. What I'm trying to do is put this exactly 60 pixels from the top. So since the hotspot or the center is within the object here, we have to do 60 plus 75 is 135. So we'll make this position 135, okay, like that here. Okay, and we can always tweak this in a second, but let's just actually get this to work first. So first of all, we're going to set this position to, let's say, 206, and actually let's make it an even 200. 200 by 135. Okay, so we're going to do player set position to 200 135. Okay, we're just going to set it there. The next one here, we'll kind of move this in the center, and let's do 1080 divided by 2 is 540. So we'll copy and paste this here. 200 is going to be the same, and we're just going to make this, I believe it was 540. Yes, 540. We'll do 540. And then lastly here, we'll make this 200. And then 1080 minus 135 is 945. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's run this here. So if we click in here, right, and there's a bit of a problem. We kind of got this down, but it always resets it here. Okay, so we're going to fix that in the next tutorial. So let's take a look at this here. So now that we have this, one thing that's good about this is that you can actually drag in between all these and it will work. And some users are going to drag, but other users are going to want to touch. And right now that doesn't work. You always want to design your game so that everyone can play it. So what I'm going to do is we have to change this to an actual variable here. Now let's take a look at how this works here. So we're gonna add in a global variable. We're gonna call this touch y. Okay, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna change these to touch y. And the reason why we're gonna do this is we're going to set the we're gonna, instead of actually getting the actual raw touch data, we're gonna have to set the variable. Okay, and in order to do that, we're going to go to touch and we're going to say on any touch start. We're going to go to system set value of touch y to touch y, just like that. And what that's going to do is it's going to set the touch to touch.y here. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this here. And there you go. So now you can go ahead and tap it and you have one of 3 lanes working here. Now, why did this not work out in the first place? Well, it's quite simple. The fact is that once you lifted off the touch, it reset those numbers back to 0. And this is something that's kind of engine specific. And one of the things you need to know about game development is that all these engines, while they may work very similarly, will have different kind of quirks and ins and outs on how to actually do things. So this here is a good workaround to how you do that here. So lots of times you can see that here, and you can go ahead and you can take a look at how that works here. This concludes the tutorial. Now if we run this here, you can see that the touch works, but the drag doesn't work anymore. So sometimes when you solve a problem, another problem comes up. And one of the things I like to do with all of my tutorials is I like to show people the way that it actually is when you're developing. A lot of the courses, especially the coding courses, don't really show you the actual way of developing and the development process. They just kind of give you a simple A to B. This is how you do things. This way, at least a lot of my students in the past have said that, it really does help you to find out how it works. So you have one problem and you solve it, and then you get another problem. This other problem here is going to be system, and we need to say actually touch is going to be in touch. Okay, and we're just going to simply copy and paste that in here. So there's two touch elements here. We have any touch and then is in touch. Okay, so we can say is in touch here, and you can see that that works out quite well, and you can also see that also works out as well. Now let's hop over to this here. There is a behavior which has this drag and drop. Now, can you do this exact same item with drag and drop? The answer is yes. And there's actually other ways to do this exact functionality here. You could set it up with a whole, for example, you could set up 3 different objects and you can touch those objects here. But if you use it this way, where you use actual raw number data, your program will be a lot more robust, just because you can play with the numbers. However, if you start bringing in sprites or other options like drag and drop, then it's possible that it might not work correctly. So numbers is the best way to make your app more robust and work best on all systems. This includes a tutorial. Let's set up the players that, or the projectiles that are going to be coming in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to clone this object type here, just so that I get the same size, and we're going to call this projectile, or we can even call this enemy, or we can call this bad box, but I think enemy works. Okay, so we have this enemy, and what we're going to do is we're going to actually add in some color to this. So we're going to make this a kind of a different color, and we'll go and we'll start off with this green. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making these kind of a pastel kind of color. And a lot of programming tutorials simply deal with the A to B. They don't really deal with design. And if you want to be a good game designer, producer of software, you have to do deal with the technical, the artistic, the design, the user experience. You have to deal with everything. And a lot of people don't teach that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in a few frames here, and we'll make several different colors here. We can always add in more. And we can go and we'll add in kind of this pinkish color for the next one. This one here, we'll kind of make it a bluish color. There we go. And you can see that these colors are kind of being themed. If we hop back into this one here, I could probably actually make it a little bit lighter. Something like that. All right, and color theming is really important. We can kind of make this a reddish orange, kind of like that. Actually, it's probably better to make it more of a red, of pure red like that. Got red. And the other thing that's good to do is to not mix colors here. So this is not going to be good as an orange here. Let's see if we can make this a definitely more of a violet purple. Okay. Pure yellow. I think that works quite well. Maybe a little bit more like that. One thing that when it comes to color, you don't always have to change the color within the palette. You can change the lightness of it as well. And let's add in one more frame. What don't we have here? We have green, got kind of this pink color, blue, red, purple, yellow, and we don't have an orange, don't we? So yeah, so let's go ahead and let's make an orange, and there we go. This pink is a little bit too vibrant for me, so let's make it even more of a pastel pink. Okay, and you can always see how this works here. Now, reds are always kind of hard to get into pastels here, but let's go ahead and let's actually kind of make it more like that. And there we go. So here we go. We now have this here. Now, if we run this, watch what happens. It just kind of goes through all of the animations here. What this is going to do is it's going to set a random animation whenever we spawn it. So how do we do that? We hop into our event sheet here. We'll say enemy, and then we're going to go on created, and we're going to set this to a random animation. So we're going to go enemy, and then we're going to type in animation, and we're going to set animation, and this animation is going to be between actually it has to be the animation number here. So it's animation and set frame. Okay, so set frame is going to be random, and we have, I believe, 6 frames. So 0, 0, 6. And what this is going to do is this is going to set it to a random frame here. And let's just see here, 0 to 6, so 7 in total because we start counting from 0. And you can see that on created here, it does kind of set that to a random frame here. But what it does not do is it does not stop it here. So what we also need to do is set animation, and then we'll do stop. We need to stop the animation here, and we'll also stop it before we set the random number here. So we can just hit F5, and there you go. You can see that it just simply gets put into a random number here. One last item to talk about is you can see that the colors actually work out quite well. It's kind of a pastel-y type color, and it does indeed work. All right. So I'm just hitting F5 and I'm refreshing, and now this gets set up here. This concludes the tutorial. All right. So now that we have this color here, we need to go and we need to set this in motion. How do we do that? Well, let's go ahead and let's add in a behavior here. And this behavior, of course, is going to be bullet. And if we close this right now and run the bullet, it will go to the right. We don't want that. We want it to go to the left. So in order to do that, we have to go to the bullet properties here. We go to set angle, no. And what we're also going to do is we're going to say on created. When the enemy is on created, we're going to go to enemy. And you can see here now that there are bullet properties. We're going to set angle of motion, and I believe it's 180. And we can go ahead and do that here. And you can see that it does indeed work the way. Now, of course, we haven't set this up so that it actually goes and collides with our player yet. But there's lots more things to do. First of all, the speed. So how do we do that here? Well, first of all, let's go ahead and add a variable here. We'll call this bullet speed, or we can call this enemy speed. Whatever makes more sense to you. And we'll set the enemy speed to initial value of 500. Let's hop back into our enemy on creative. We're going to go to enemy and we're going to go to set speed and we're going to go to enemy speed. And you're thinking, well, wait a minute. Well, why can't we just set it in here? If we set the enemy speed to a variable, we can change that variable later, thus making the game harder. So let's go ahead, let's do that here. And you can see that it does indeed work. Okay? The next thing we need to do is we need to set up the system so that we can, we need to set up the system so that the enemy spawns in one lane or another, so that you can indeed avoid it. Okay, but before we even do that here, we can actually set this to a rotation. Okay, so we can make the enemy kind of rotate. Okay, and in order to do that, let's go ahead and let's hop back into our item here. We can do system every tick, and we're going to go to enemy rotate clockwise, and we'll actually just do, let's say, 3 degrees. Okay, there we go. And you can see that that works here. Pretty cool stuff here. Okay, so you can see that that works out quite well. You can play around with that number here. 3 is pretty good. 5 gets to be a little bit too much. I think that's pretty good. Pretty neat. All right. Now, the other thing we need to do is, if let's say we're playing the game and the enemy gets is off the screen like this here, what happens to the enemy? Well, the enemy here will technically get the enemy will technically go on forever. So there's 2 ways we can deal with this here. We're going to deal with, one way to deal with this is to simply go destroy outside of layout. And this works. And if you don't do this, the game will actually slow down quite a bit, because you're constantly spawning new game objects. And game objects, the more you have, the more it will take, more CPU power it will take, and then thus will slow down your game. So the other thing that I like to do is I like to add in another sprite here. Okay, and we'll make this like a hideous kind of pink color that's just too bright, and we'll call this enemy destroy, just like that here. And what this is going to do is that this is going to be, when it hits this object, it's going to destroy it. The reason why I like to do this is that, let's say you want to spawn your enemy outside of here like this, and you want it to kind of move here. You can do that, but if you do the destroy outside of layout, it will never happen. So let's go ahead, let's do that here. Let's hop into this and say if system, if enemy is on collision with another object, and that object is going to be enemy destroy, and we're going to simply do enemy destroy. And so that's just simply going to destroy here. Now, is this essential to the gameplay? Well, the user isn't really going to notice this. In fact, if you're watching this and you play games, you probably won't notice it either. But you do need to do this, otherwise your app will lag, and that's not good. This includes the tutorial. Next thing we need to do is we need to spawn the items here. Well, we need to go and we need to say add in another item here, and this item is going to be a global variable, and we're going to call this enemy lane. So we're going to pick a random lane to spawn enemy here. We're also going to add another global variable called this enemy spawn time, and we'll make this, for the first part, 2 seconds. So we're going to go add in the system every X seconds, and this is going to be enemy spawn time. Spawn time, every enemy spawn time, we're going to spawn an enemy. We're going to go system create object, and it's going to be we're going to spawn an enemy here. Okay, but what we need to do first is we need to pick a lane here. So the first thing we need to do is go to system random system, and then we're going to set value of enemy lane to, and we have to do this here. We have to go round, and we're going to go 0 to 2. Okay, and let's just take a look at that here. Round the numbers is going to be random. So round random 0 comma 2. And why do we have to round the randoms here? Well, if a random number will generate a random number between 0 and 2, so that could be 1.5, 1.6, 2 or 0 0.5. But if you round it, it will simply round the number. So rounding the number is really important. So every act spawn times, they're going to round the enemy number to 1 here. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add in a subcondition here. So in order to add a subcondition, I push the key X. And I'm going to say system compare variable, and it's going to say if enemy lane is equal to 0, we're going to create system create object. The object is going to be, of course, the enemy, and we're going to say the X here is going to be right in the middle. So I believe it was 135, which is what we wanted to do here. So it'll create the enemy at 135. We need to copy and paste these here, and we need to add in the other 2 lanes. So we're going to add an enemy lane 1 and enemy lane 2. We're going to also create this at, I believe this was 540, and actually we can see the values up here. And the last one here is going to be 945. So what this is going to do is it's going to, every X seconds, it's going to do that here. Now, for testing purposes, I'm going to make this really fast, just so that we can do it with here. When you test the game here, it's not supposed to be fun and played here. So you can see here that this is not working out. Okay, there is an error here, and that's why I always test it here. Okay, and so the reason is that the enemy X is 135. It should be the Y, which is 135, and the X here, let's hop over. Let's just click done here, and the X should be something like 2100. Okay, and I'm getting the value over here as well. So the X should be 2100, and the Y should be 35, and the X should be 2100, and this will be 540. And it's good to test, and if you're wrong or make a mistake, don't worry about it. You can always fix it. Let's go ahead and let's run that here. And so there we go. You can see that that works out here. Now, of course, this is not going to be what the game is all about here. You obviously want to set it up so that it makes a little bit more sense. So let's change it to, let's say, 0.7. Okay, that's still pretty fast. So you're essentially going to be avoiding these here. Okay, so that actually works out quite well. So we can avoid it, and you can see it's a little bit too fast, but you can see that it does indeed work. And I actually think the color works quite well. This concludes the tutorial. So obviously this enemy spawn time is going to be too fast. Let's put it up to 2, and we'll test it at that for now. The next thing we need to do is kind of add in the reset logic here. So what we need to do is, it's actually pretty simple. If, for example, player is on collision with enemy, then we'll go ahead and we'll run that here. And what this enemy is going to do is we're just simply going to system restart layout. So we have our game here, and then it's going to, bam, restart the layout. Okay, there we go. And you can see that this works out quite well. We have this here, and everything actually works out quite well. But you can see here that if I kind of move this up and I touch it at this point, you can see that you can definitely see that won't work. Okay, so it's going to take a little bit of time here to deal with that. What we can do is we can stop the game, which makes more sense to restart the layout here. So when we collide with enemy object here, we're going to go to enemy, and we have this rotate 5 degrees. What we need to do is we need to add in, for example, player is alive. So is alive, and we'll set it to 1 because it's a Boolean variable, either 0 it's not alive or 1 it is alive. There is no global Booleans, at least this time, in construct 2, although I wish there was. So we're going to say if system compare variable is alive is equal to 1. So if we run it here, nothing changes because we need to change that here. So we hop back in here. When we collide with the enemy and we set value of is alive to not true. And this is how death, or the player's death, is actually calculated within most games. So if we go to run layout here, and then we go ahead and we meet our demise, you can see here that the enemies are now a square here. That's actually kind of a neat effect here. Sometimes they could be rotating and other times they could not be. We might even play around with that later because that actually sounded and looked actually really cool. So we're going to say is alive is equal to 0 here. And what we're going to actually do is we're actually going to stop the bullet speed as well. So we're going to go to enemy, and then we're going to do set the acceleration. And actually, it's not the acceleration. It's the, in fact, enemy. And it's going to be speed to 0. Okay, so we first of all, we stop the rotation, we stop the speed, and let's go ahead and let's add in a system object here. And we need to, we go add a system, and then we're going to say wait. We're going to wait for now 3 seconds. And that 3 seconds is going to just simply stop it here. Okay, so bam, 2, 3, and then it resets the layout here. So that all works out, except you see that all the other enemies here did get stopped here. So what we need to do instead is we need to say, for example, system compare variable, and we're going to say if is alive is equal to 0, we're going to have to go and set the bullet speed to 0. Okay, so all the enemies are gonna stop here. So let's run that again, and then bam, you can see that both of them work. And then we now need to reset that here. So this tackles problem 1 or problem 2. So we have this working here. The problem is that we need to reset it, and I'm going to show you how to do that in the next tutorial. See you then. So when you reset the game, we have to reset a bunch of variables. And resetting might be as simple as putting the reset button or pushing the reset button on your console, but it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to System, and we're going to go to On Start of Layout, and we're going to say if the On Start of Layout, we need to set System set value of is alive, and we'll make that equal to 1. And this should fix most of our problems. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this. And there we go. And we have a new item here. And you can see that everything is indeed working. All right, pretty cool stuff. Let's also take a look at what we also need to reset. Again, since we might be playing around with enemy spawn time and enemy speed, we need to reset those as well. So you can actually copy and paste this here, system, and go to enemy spawn time will be equal to 2, and enemy speed is also equal to 500. Now, if you set up a variable, then you need to reset that variable as well. And so for each variable that you have to go and reset it. There's another way to do that where you can just simply say system and then it's reset global variables. And what that will do is that will just reset the global variables to whatever you see within construct 2. Now this may work, however, there's an issue with that. And the issue is that if you, let's say, have a score and you want to have a high score, it will reset that value as well. So you can use this, and I do use it, and I sometimes use it in my tutorials. However, it's a little bit better to not use that. Only in very simple games that it's probably the best to use that reset variables. And I usually use it for testing purposes anyway. This includes the tutorial. Let's go ahead and let's add in a score here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in a text object here. And we're going to go and move it up to the top. Now, we're going to move it up here, and the reason is that this is one of the areas that is not used for pretty much anything. Let's go ahead, let's change it here. First of all, we're going to change, Arial's actually a pretty good one here. We'll change it to maybe 72, and we're going to change it to 0. Okay, 0 just like that. So it is indeed 0. We're going to obviously make this right, justified, so we're going to hug this to the wall. It's always good to leave a bit of a margin, so I'm going to go ahead and do that here. Now this is going to collide a little bit with the actual boxes, but it won't be for very long. Next thing we can do here is we can actually do 248 and for some reason it's not letting me do that here. So we can do 55, 255, 255, or we can go to other and custom and go 248, 248, and then 248. So that will give us that nice number here. And 72 is just not big enough, so let's make it 100. 100 works, and you just might have to do that here. And maybe make it a little bit bigger. Just run the layout here. And you can see that we have the score here. But we have to actually go and make the score. A lot of new mobile games have very simple scoring, and we're going to go with that theme here. We're going to simply call this score, and we're going to add one to score whenever an enemy gets destroyed. So we already have that logic in here when the enemy gets destroyed. And we're going to go to System, and we're going to go to Set Value, or we can actually simply go System, Add To, and we're going to simply add one to score. Okay, since we added score, we do have to reset the score. So we're going to go to System, Set Value of Score, back down to 0. So if you don't reset the score will not work. I could show that to you, but you can take my word for it. So once it hits it, we got 1, 2, and while score is technically getting set, we never set in the logic to actually change the text. So we're going to find our every tick here, and we can go even every tick is alive. Yeah, I think that works out quite well. And we'll go to text, and we're going to go to set text. And this text is simply going to be score, just like that. And this is going to simply set the score. So let's go ahead and let's run that. So, there we go. And you can see that we got 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if I kind of make a mistake, it resets it back to 0. Very good. Now, there is a bit of an issue with the actual scoring box here. It's a little far away, so let's move it closer. That way, the player's score will get updated much quicker. So watch this. Yeah. Now, the thing is, though, is that it technically destroys it while the item is on screen. So one way we can actually can deal with that here is just kind of move it like this, and that way you'll know exactly where it is here. In fact, I'm just going to kind of move this just like that here. Okay, there we go, and then it's going to see, and there we go. You can see that the item is fully off the screen. Now you're probably wondering, does it really matter? And the answer is, well, it's a little less sloppy this way, and it looks better. So little items and little very little things like that will actually make your game much more enjoyable to play. A lot of programmers don't even care about this. So if you do care about it, you will be better off. Your game will be better off. And if you're looking for a job as a programmer, you will definitely find better success. Because when I work with programmers, I have a hard time dealing with that. This includes the tutorial. So we have a game here. Let's go ahead and let's add in a difficulty level here. So we're going to go to System, and we're going to go to let's say, we're going to make this a really short game, because a lot of casual mobile games, they actually don't have a lot of time playing. You're playing for almost less than 30 seconds. So we're going to go to every 1 second. We're going to increase the enemy speed, and we're going to decrease the enemy spawn time. Okay, so it's going to be System, and then it's going to be, we're going to set the value of enemy speed to, instead of setting the value, it's always better to just simply add to. We're going to go to enemy speed, and let's say 550. We do have to do a bit of testing, okay? So every 1 second is going to be 550, and then we're going to go to subtract from enemy spawn time, and we're going to make it 0.2. I think that's probably going to be working. Let's take a look at how that works. So every 1 second, it's going to speed up, and then that is way too fast. Sometimes I do enjoy the way this works here. So, of course, we're adding in a whole bunch here. What we really wanted to do is make it 50. So let's add that in here. So you can see that that's a little bit faster, and that's even faster yet. Faster, faster, faster. And let's just take a look at this here. And then it gets to be way too fast. and then the enemy spawn time also becomes too fast as well. So we're going to have to add in we'll say maybe every 3 seconds. Okay, we'll make it that in the end. But 50 is good. Let's make it 30. Okay, and then we'll actually subtract 0.15. And so let's take a look at that here. And you might be wondering, why should we test this like this? This seems like a very silly lesson, but you need to go and do this step or else your game won't be fun. Remember, just because your game works doesn't mean that it's actually any good, right? Just because you have a bunch of code that makes a game kind of worthwhile, then it doesn't make any sense here. Okay, so now it gets to be a little bit too much here. So we also have to say every 1 second, and we have to say add in another item here. We're going to compare variable. We're going to go to enemy speed, and I believe zero point 0.6 was the most is greater than or equal to 0. 0.6. I think that was the max. And then another thing here we're going to also do is go to system, compare variable, and this compare variable is going to be enemy spawn time. It's not going to be. It's enemy speed is less than or equal to, let's say, 800. Let's just actually set, yeah, let's say 800. So that's probably going to be good too. And what we're doing is we're setting up the range here. Okay, so you can see here that it's possible that this is all working out, and you can kind of move your thing here. Everything's good to go, and it gets more complicated really, really fast. Didn't quite work out. Okay, so that's a little bit too fast. So enemy spawn time, let's make it 0.8, and then the enemy speed here, I think 800 is actually pretty good. Let's run that again. And by the way, this tutorial as of now is only 3 minutes, so this process really doesn't take that long, but you need to be able to do it, right? So there we go. Yeah, there we go. 19, etc. Okay. The other thing is that the score is going up a bit too much, and I think that's actually pretty good. The only thing we need to do is change the interval of time here. So you can see how I'm debugging this. What I'm doing is I am making sure that, for example, the enemy is come out really quickly, but in the end, I'm going to make it every 3 seconds, and that kind of prolongs the game. So what this is going to do is for example, we have this work, and then let's just actually test it one more time, and then that'll probably be it for the tutorial. So don't need to do anything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it gets a little bit harder. It's 8, and nothing's coming up here. There we go. Oh, didn't quite make it. Yeah, so I think that actually works out quite well. The only other problem is this is kind of in here. Let's set lane to 1 so it automatically starts within the first lane. Okay, and there we go. This concludes the tutorial. Next thing we're going to do is, remember we had kind of a happy accident earlier on where sometimes the blocks didn't rotate, they kind of just stayed the same, and they didn't do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually add in something called a game state here. We'll call this game state, or we can call this rotation state, and we'll make it equal to 1, or it's a little bit of a typo there, but it's going to be equal to 1, and that's going to be that it is rotating. Here we're going to say system compare variable, and we're going to say rotation state is equal to 1 here. Okay, but what I'm also going to do is copy and paste this down here, and we're going to have to reset this text score here, but rotation state is equal to 0, and I'm going to actually delete this here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to reset the game so that some of them aren't rotating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, for example, I'm going to say system every tick, And since we changed up the logic, we're going to have to put the text in there. So let's go ahead and let's delete both of those here. And we're going to say enemy rotation is equal to 0 degrees. Okay, and all we're going to do here is we're going to change rotation state. So we're going to go to system every, let's say 10 seconds. Every 10 seconds, we're going to change the Z value of rotation state to 0. Okay, and actually the easiest way to do this is to not set the rotation rate, is to simply add the rotation rate, add 1 to the rotation rate. But you're thinking, so we have 0, and then it'll add 1, and then it'll add 2. Well, that way, we add in a compare variable. If rotation state is equal to 2, then we're going to say rotation state is equal to 0. So that way, it will, rotation rate is equal to 0. And that way, it will reset the logic here. Let's test this out, and let's say every 3 seconds. So we got rotation 2, 3, and then it will simply just kind of do that here. Kind of neat. All right. Actually, that does look kind of cool. But let's we're going to play around with that here. So in addition, we're also going to set enemy rotation or angle. We're going to do set angle to 0 here. And what that's going to do is it's going to set the angle to 0. You'll see what I mean by that. And then I'll just kind of do that there. So it'll turn, and then nothing there. Now, is this going to be confusing to the player here? Well, what's going to happen is that the player is going to simply realize that rotation does not matter. You cannot get hit by these square blocks, right? So it's up to you whether you want to do this. These game states and these kind of these game states actually work out quite well here. And let's actually make it let's make it 7 seconds. All right, so we got 1. Let's see how that looks. 5, 6, 7. There you go. Yeah. Actually, I kind of like it. Let's make it 4 seconds. All right. This includes the tutorial. Welcome everybody. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up this tutorial here. So as you can see, we got this nice little game where we can go and simply avoid all the items here. And you have this cool little feature where it goes from spinning to not spinning, and you can see how that works here. If you really wanted to, you could actually make yours spin. Or if you think it adds in a whole other level of complexity, that's up to you as well. So your challenge here is, if you think of this on a mobile device, this actually works out quite well, except for what happens if you're left-handed. And if you're left-handed, this might not work out well. So your challenge is to make a prompt that asks the user whether it's right-handed or left-handed. And if it's right-handed, the game appears as this way here. But if you're left-handed, this white block will be on the other side, and everything will go the opposite way. So you essentially have to flip it around. Now, it's a little bit harder to do, but you can do it, and that's your challenge. This concludes the tutorial.